Good evening, everybody. It's great to see everyone in person after 2 years. So we're looking forward to a wonderful senior year. Just to update you, we had a club fair on Monday. Things we're off to a great start. So basically, tonight's a big night as far as preparing for the next 4 or 5 months. On other notes, back to school night is next Thursday, the 22nd. Just make a note. Get to meet your students' teachers. And we're looking forward to a great homecoming. So I want to thank you for your students, and they've been very cooperative in starting senior year. We're looking forward to a great senior year. On that note, I'll turn it over to our counselors, Ms. Perillo and Mr. Treglia.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our college counseling night. Tonight we're going to be talking about the next steps in our college process and how to actually apply to college. An email was sent out from our guidance office this week to sign up for individual family meetings, and we've started those meetings actually this week. So if you haven't signed up yet, please do so. Up on the screen is a picture of our guidance website. You can access this from our Tuckahoe High School webpage under the Guidance tab. It's really a one-stop shop for all of our students and families to access all the information the counseling staff talks about in the college process. Up on the left part of the screen, you can see many different tabs. For example, some tabs up there are the college application checklist, writing a college essay, application processing forms, and the common application. There's other tabs up there as well, but I would recommend to get familiar with those, have your son or daughter get familiar with those, and we talk about this in our office as well with them. The contact information from both counselors and our school counseling secretary is up there as well. The student application checklist. All our senior students should have begun a draft of their college essay. So maybe when you get home tonight, you want to talk to your son or daughter about that. And if they haven't, now's the time to work with them. We will be working with them. They're working with their English teacher in class to start the college essay. They should have started filling out the common application. We're happy to help as a counseling staff with that, but we want them to take some ownership and start that on their own as well. Talk to them, remind them about talking to the 2 teachers that they've already asked for the recommendations from. They should have sent an email or talked to the teacher over the summer or last spring about asking for a recommendation. If they haven't done that yet, this is the week to do it in person. If your son or daughter is going to apply early decision or early action, remind them to just tell that to the teacher, because the teacher that is writing their recommendations has to get a start on writing their recommendations early. And the teachers have a lot of recommendations to write, so we don't want them to get bogged down with 20 or 30 early action, early decision college recommendations to write. So please have your son or daughter remind them maybe this week. In our individual senior meetings, we're going to be discussing the college processing form, check in that they've created a common application account, and talk to them about a list of colleges that meet their academic profile, their social profile, a couple of reach schools, a few target schools, and 1 or 2 safety schools. And we'll be talking about that in our individual parent and student meeting. Up on the screen, you see a little sign about letters of recommendation. As I said, all students should have asked 2 teachers already to write them a letter of recommendation. The teacher request should go through the Naviance program. During our individual meetings, we're happy to work with your son or daughter on how to do that and how to send that email out to the teacher. In case your student hasn't asked for a recommendation, again, we should be doing that this week. Okay, if you don't know and they're not telling you the right story, feel free to contact myself or Ms. Perillo, and we'll get down to the bottom of this.
Hi, good evening, everyone. The college essay. So the college essay, we've noticed the last few years, has become a bigger and bigger piece of the college application process. Since COVID, a lot of colleges have gone test optional, meaning you don't necessarily have to send in your SAT or ACT scores. So the weight of the college essay has increased a little bit. It's also the one opportunity for the admissions officers to get to know the student's personality. So they're just not a GPA anymore, they're not a resume anymore, it's actually who they are. And this is easier said than done to get through during a college essay, but it's our job, and Ms. Iverson's working with the students currently to make sure the essay is up to par. All students can arrange an individual meeting with Mrs. Iverson to go over their college essay, so I think that's of great importance. She's really helpful in this process. She'll make sure everything's grammatically perfect. And also they're working on it in class. She said that it should all be completed by the end of this month. So I know everybody's in different stages of the college process at this point. Some students are done with their college essay and have done it on their own. Some students haven't yet started. But the idea is to really do it pretty soon. Hopefully by the end of this month, everybody can really finalize it. We are happy to read the college essays as well. Many of the students write them on their Google Drive, so they can just share us in and we can read it and edit from our offices, which is helpful. Okay. So one of the biggest things is that this has kind of become a creative writing assignment. So you want to steer away from your typical overcoming an obstacle kind of essay, and you can use it if it's creative, but we've found more success with essays that are a little bit different. So on our website, we have samples of college essays, which is helpful to read. One of the best essays I've ever read was on a plate of food that a student preferred and how that plate of food related to their personality. So it doesn't really need to be, it matters less about what it's specifically about and more how they relate it to their personality. So again, easier said than done, but we are here to help support that. In addition to the college essay, some of the more competitive colleges have what we call supplements, which might be an additional essay or a few paragraphs. So students should be listing and compiling schools and knowing which schools require supplements and which don't. Ms. Iverson and ourselves are happy to help with all of these essays, but some schools do require 1 or 2 additional essays, so you need to prepare for that as well. Okay, so application deadlines and admissions. There are different types of applications. The most common one is the Common Application, so we've asked all of the students to already create a username and password for the Common App. Most of the colleges nationwide are on the Common Application with a few exceptions. One of those exceptions are the CUNY schools, so those are the City University of New York schools, and they have their own application. So with the CUNY application, you can rank up to 6 city universities for 1 application fee. Very select few colleges require that you privately apply through their website, but there are a few that do. So when a student looks up all of their colleges on Common App, if they cannot find it, it means they likely have to do it on another application. And again, we can support no matter what application they use. The advantage of the Common Application is that there's a common piece that gets sent to every school, so you don't have to repeat the same information over and over. Also, the Common Application connects to Naviance and will help with that process as well, but it allows us to seamlessly send the students' letters of recommendation and transcripts electronically through Naviance to all of their Common App schools. Okay, so at this point, and hopefully if you haven't at this point or your child hasn't, if you go home, we encourage you to have them all start their Common Application and also to use their personal email address as the username instead of their school email, because sometimes the school email blocks the colleges who are trying to contact them. And if it's too late, you can always edit it and change it. Okay, deadlines and admission types. So there's different types of admissions. The first one is regular admissions. And typically the deadline for regular admissions is January 1st, approximately. And you find out around April 1st if you've gotten into that school or not. We've seen a huge trend of students not applying regular anymore and applying what we call early action or rolling admissions. So early action, the deadlines are as soon as November 1st or November 15th. Rolling admissions, you can submit within a large window of time and they evaluate it as soon as they receive it. The advantage to early action, it doesn't help you get into school anymore, but you do find out sooner into your senior year if you've gotten into a school. It allows you time in the second half of the year to figure out where you want to go. So typically if you apply early action, you'll find out around January or February if you've gotten into that school or not. The one downside with early action is the early deadline. So that means if your deadline is November 1st, you really should be submitting it at least a week or two before that deadline. So that brings us, to mid-October, which is a month away. So we don't want a student to rush the process. So if they're not ready and they don't have a comprehensive application, then you can wait and do it rolling or regular. But if they are prepared, we have found it beneficial, and students do like to know where they've gotten in a little bit sooner their senior year. The last type of admissions is early decision, and it's a binding process. So you can only apply to one college early decision. It does help you. It's an advantage when you apply early decision. Typically, school acceptances increase 10 to 12% if you apply early decision. Again, the downside is you have to 100% know that you are going to go to the school. So the student signs off, the parent signs off, and I sign off, and you're committing, if you get accepted, that you will attend that school. So again, there is an advantage to it, and not all colleges offer it, but many of the private ones do. The last thing is, we in guidance are a part of this application process. So, it skips ahead. So when a student hands in an application, they're done with their part, but we still have to send things on our end. So if you wait till the last day of the deadline, it doesn't give us any time to send in our piece, and the application is not considered complete. So we ask at least a week notice before the deadline of the college so that everything can be in and the application is considered complete. Naviance. So all students hopefully have a list in Naviance. We used it during our junior meetings, and we will continue to use it this year as well. And like I said before, Naviance connects to Common App. So anything that's done in Common App is then reflected in their Naviance account. I'm just going to briefly touch on this chart again. So Mr. Treglia touched on the fact that students should be applying to safety, target, and reach schools, and this graph helps us decipher if a school is a safety, target, or reach for a student. So I know it might be a little hard for you to see. There's a little red circle on the top right corner. That red circle represents the student, okay? And so it's marking their GPA and their SAT or ACT score. If they are somewhere within the green dots mean it's accepted students. So these are students from Tuckahoe who've also applied. In this case, it's Marist College, and they've gotten accepted. The red X's mean they've been denied, and the blue is waitlisted or deferred. So if you're within that green pack, we know it's a target school. If you're above and to the right, we know it's a safe school. And if you're below that green pack a little bit or below to the left, we know it's a little bit of a reach. So it just helps us to figure out if we have a comprehensive list of schools to apply to. The other thing that you can do on Naviance is that you can, Ms. Nicoletos posts all of the college visits. So this year the college visits are still virtual, but students can sign up to meet with the college virtually through Naviance and let Ms. Nicoletos know as well. We think it's a big advantage. A lot of the times the college representatives who talk to our Tuckahoe students are the ones actually reading their applications. So if they get to know your child or your student, it can help them. If they remember their name or face and then they're looking at their application later and they say, oh, I remember them from Tuckahoe, it's beneficial. So continue to encourage your student to do it whenever there's a college coming to visit Tuckahoe that's on their list. All right, I just touched on this before, but as guidance counselors, we submit the transcript, our school profile, and then the 2 teachers of letters of recommendation, and we each write our own letter of recommendation for every student. So when a student finishes their application, they inform us through an orange sheet of paper, which I'll show you in a minute, and they deliver that paper to us, and that informs us that they've applied, and then we submit everything from our end. The only other thing that needs to be submitted along with that is official SAT or ACT scores. So those are the 3 pieces that need to come together at the college's end for an application to be considered complete. One other new thing this year is that we are letting parents decide and students decide whether or not to show Regents scores on their transcript. So we are going, a lot of the students have exemptions that were due to COVID. Some may have higher scores, some may have lower scores, so you'll have the option whether or not to submit them. We are going to default by not submitting them, and then if you want to opt in, we're going to have you email Mrs. Nicoletto. So I will send out a Blackboard Connect tomorrow just to remind you of this and to let Ms. Nicoletto know. Hopefully we can do it by the end of the week. My advice would be if the Regent scores are really high and comparable to the rest of the grades on the transcript, you can send them. If not, there's no reason to send them. So the Regents are just New York State exams. A lot of colleges really, it really doesn't matter to send them. So unless they are comparable to the rest of the grades, I would hold off on sending them.
Sending your SAT or ACT scores. This is a really critical step in the process. All the students and families are responsible for sending your test scores to the colleges of your choice. Your application is not complete unless the scores are sent directly from College Board or ACT.org. As noted in the slide above, you should give about a 2 weeks notice prior to the deadline. So if the deadline is November 1st, you want to start working on October 15th, October 16th to get your scores sent. Most of the students will list their scores on the Common Application, and that's okay to do. But please know the scores are not official unless you order and pay for them and send them directly to the colleges of your choice from ACT.org or collegeboard.org. Just a few quick tips. The student's name on the Common Application must match exactly what's on the College Board or the ACTstudent.org. This is done so that when you send your test scores, the college can match it appropriately. We as the counselors, we don't get contacted by the college if you're missing a certain part of your application. The colleges contact the student directly on what's missing in their application. One of our recommendations would be to contact the college a few days after you send the application in. They'll have time to get the paperwork in the folder, and you can contact them and just make sure that they have everything that they need from your application. If you're thinking of playing a sport, there's a governing body called the NCAA. We're happy to help you with this. Your test scores do need to be sent directly to the NCAA. There's something called a clearinghouse, and myself or Ms. Perillo, we're definitely happy to help you with that process. Some key tips in making connections with the reps. When you're visiting a college or you're going to a fair and you're talking to a rep from a school that's high on your list, you should make sure that you're making a connection. One of the suggestions would be grab the business card of the rep. When you get home that night or the next day, the student should be sending an email thanking the rep for the conversation, talking about something interesting that they had in the conversation, and maybe asking a question. We would suggest keeping that rapport up. Maybe an email every 2 weeks talking about what they're doing in high school, what they're doing out of the building, and also keep it on the same thread. Making that connections with the rep, who might be the reader of your application, is key in getting accepted to some of the colleges that you're right on the border of. Okay, so it's really important right now when you go to the fairs or you're visiting a school, try to talk to the reader of the Westchester applications, or you can find that out on each college's website. Grab the business card, and the student definitely should start that email or start that relationship with the admissions representative. The 4-year retention rate is the percentage of every student who starts at the college and then graduates 4 years later. So as an applicant, we're telling the students to talk to the reps about situations where they've finished their goals, and talk to the rep about how they're committed to this college and how they want to go to this college and why they want to go there, And you want to sell yourself a little bit to the rep. You want to make them feel that this is one of your top choices, and you want to complete your goals, and you want to graduate in 4 years. Because college is a business too. The yield percentage. The yield percentage is how many students are accepted to the college, and then actually how many students actually attend that college. The college wants their yield to be high, right? You read all the magazines, the colleges are ranked in the magazines, they want a high yield. As the student, you want to convey that you're interested, that you've researched the college, that you visited the college, that you're communicating with the rep, and this makes the college feel more comfortable in maybe admitting you because they feel that you're going to actually attend that college, and that helps their yield. When researching a college, and we'll do this in our meeting, just make sure that the college has a reputable program in what major the student wants to major in, or what if they have a minor that the student wants to do. You want to make sure your specific interest matches what the colleges have to offer. If you're interested in ROTC, you have to make sure that the college has that. If you're interested in dance and art, make sure that the college has that as a major. This is important in the college process for each student, and we'll be talking about that in our meeting. And when you're going to pick a college, don't pick what everyone else is doing. Try to pick where you feel you're going to be the most happiest and you're the most comfortable on that campus. Students do better when they're comfortable, when they're happy, when they feel welcome. It's not all about the sticker on the back of the car, the window. It's about where you feel most comfortable to let yourself develop in the next 4 years as a person and as a student.
So I'm just going to touch on how the process has changed a little bit since COVID. So sometimes students are lacking maybe community service because of COVID. They weren't really committed to clubs or volunteering their time, right, for 2 years. And also their academics could have fluctuated a bit. We went through a period of time where we went pass-fail. Colleges are aware of this, and what we hear continuously from the college counselors is that it will not be held against the students. And I would say the last 2 years after going through the process with our past seniors, it really hasn't affected the process and how admissions counselors are looking at our students. And also, if you really look at the numbers and acceptance rates, it's pretty similar to before COVID. The one thing that has changed is that so many colleges are going test optional, like I said before. There are pluses and minuses to both. Typically, if a student's SAT or ACT scores fit within what we call the middle 50%, so like if you Google a college and what their average SAT score is, if your child's score is somewhere around that, then you can submit it, and then we would advise you to submit it. If it's significantly lower, then it's not worth submitting it, and it won't be held against the student by any means. When a student does not submit a score, the importance of other things and other pieces of their application matter. So you want to make sure, and regardless of whether you submitted it or not, you want to make sure that everything is perfect that you send in, that you've had a few eyes read over it, that everything's grammatically correct, that when you're looking at the activities section that it reads consistently like a resume. So overall, I think that all of the students are really okay at this point in regards to COVID, and they'll understand a gap in any community service or activities or clubs, and they're used to it at this point by now. Okay, so we're going to briefly touch on financial aid and scholarships, but before we begin, we partner with Eastchester, and they hold a financial aid night at Eastchester Library. It looks like it's going to be on October 27th. I will confirm it and then send out the information as soon as it's 100%. But that night, there's a financial aid specialist who can help and who knows a bit more than we do on this. So I would advise you, if you have any questions or a specific situation, that you should attend that night. So there's merit aid and there's college scholarships. So merit aid is wonderful. It's free grant money that you get based on academics that you do not have to pay back. So that's wonderful. College scholarships, a lot of colleges have individual scholarships. Let's say if you score over a 1100 on your SAT, you might get another $10,000 a year. So each college is different. The one thing to consider a little bit, which is tricky, is that some schools do require SAT or ACT scores in order to receive some of their specific scholarships, and every college differs in that way, so you have to look into it. Ms. Nicoletos updates a scholarship bulletin, and so typically we recommend that students work on their applications the first half of the year, and then usually in like December, January, Ms. Nicoletos will update the scholarship bulletin as she gets the scholarships, and it grows and grows, and students should keep checking and see whatever scholarships that they're applicable to apply to. They should. A lot of times only 5 or 6 students will apply because it requires an additional essay that nobody wants to write. So if you actually take the time to apply, a lot of times our students are really successful. This scholarship bulletin has some local scholarships, which can be like our PTA scholarships or Little League scholarships, and it also has ones that are a little bit bigger. So I would definitely look at that, but like I said, focus on the application process first and then the scholarship process second. A lot of times, places that you don't necessarily think about right away have scholarships you should look into. So if you belong to a church or you belong to a union or your job can potentially have a scholarship, so ask around and see what's available. In addition to that, there are nationwide scholarship search engines. So one example is FastWeb, and that kind of you put in your criteria and it connects you with scholarships that you can apply to. Those are a little bit harder to get. You're competing nationwide for those, but if you have the time and energy to go through all of them, then it is another resource for you to use. We do have a scholarship tab on our guidance page, and the scholarship bulletin is accessible via Naviance as well, the students' Naviance accounts. The Excelsior Scholarship is for the SUNY schools and CUNY schools. So those are the State University of New York and the City University of New York. So if a family is making under $125,000, their child is eligible to go to college for free. So I think that opens usually later than the FAFSA. So usually I think in December that opens to apply to. It's a wonderful opportunity. It starts off as free money. If a student doesn't keep up a certain GPA, that money turns into a loan that you do have to pay back. So you want to look into it all before you sign any paperwork. Sorry. And then there's the FAFSA, so that's the federal financial aid, and that opens on October 1st, and usually the sooner you apply to the FAFSA, the more money that's available. So we would encourage you all to do it in October if you can. You need your tax returns in order to apply for federal financial aid. Typically what happens is you fill out the FAFSA and you list the schools that your student is applying to on the FAFSA, so it sends it to those schools. The colleges will then take the FAFSA and decide what kind of money they will give you in addition or not in addition to the FAFSA, and then they will send you a financial aid package. You can go through it and decide to accept or not accept what they're offering you at that point. There's also something called a CSS profile. And though that is required by private schools, and it's usually in addition to the FAFSA, it's a little bit more invasive to fill out and time consuming, but some colleges require it. So I would look, if your student is applying to private schools, I would just check to see if that's a requirement as well. And it could get you more money if you fill it out, so it is worthwhile. Again, we are going to touch on this all in the meeting. So everything that we're going over this evening is going to be individualized when we have our individual meetings, and you can always reach out to us if you have any separate questions on it. Again, please keep your eyes open for the Blackboard Connect about the Eastchester Financial Aid Night as well. So this is the college application processing form. This form in person is bright orange. It will be in a folder that we give you on your individualized meetings. They're also available in guidance to pick up for any student. This is what informs us that you have applied to a college. So once a student or once a family applies to a college, makes the payment and submits it, they will fill out this form and hopefully give it to one of us the next day. If they don't give it to us, we don't get notified that you have applied, so we can't send anything without this form. Like I said, we would appreciate this form at least 1 week prior to the deadline so we can send in everything. Also, if you go through, it reminds you of all the steps you should have taken to get to this point. So it reminds you that you have to send your SAT or ACT scores. It reminds you that you have to go through the NCAA clearinghouse if you're an athlete. It asks what website you applied on. So just make sure it's just a quick reminder and checklist for you to go through as well. If a student applies to 10 colleges in one evening, they do not need to fill out 10 separate forms. They can put all the colleges on one form. So this is probably, we started doing this form a few years ago, and it's been really beneficial and helps us to keep track of everything really well. This information will also be in your folder. When a student is filling out their common application, it's going to ask them specific questions on class size, on date of graduation. It'll ask if our high school ranks. So it's also posted in guidance, but here it is for you if you are filling out your common application and you run into questions. We're also going to be doing the College Cafe, which is going to be a time for our seniors to come in and to work on their applications, and Mr. Treglia and myself can support the students and actually help them and review in our guidance office. So the students will be aware of it. We are really excited to start this process again, and we're glad to have this in person finally again, in our meetings in person. It's really nice and refreshing. We're sure you have a lot of questions. A lot of them will be answered and more individualized, like I said. But we are here also this evening for some questions and answers if you have anything that you'd like us to address tonight.
Just the sign up is on the Google Doc
For what?
for the individual meetings?
So the sign up is on Sign Up Genius, it's called. So Ms. Nicoletto sent that out. If you didn't receive that email, please reach out to her tomorrow and she can resend it to sign up. So we have access through Naviance to some alumni who maybe have attended the school that you're interested in, so we could help potentially connect you, but there's no specific program right now.
Well, we're a small school, we could be able to have contact with most likely.
Yeah.
Plus it's a school no one's gone to. Any other questions?
How often will the students meet with guidance during this whole process?
So we have the individualized meeting, and then it's usually, there are some faces we see every day, and some who do it on their own and want like one last check-in with us, and just we get an orange paper from. So it's really up to the student. If they want the support and help, we are here. After these meetings, like we have a lot of meetings scheduled, the individual meetings, and then after that, our office is open. The students drop in during their study halls or in between classes or lunchtime. We're happy to help whenever. So the parent was already received the email. If you didn't, then just contact Mrs. Nicolettos, the guidance secretary, and she can either resend you the sign-up form or she'll just organize with you a time that will work. Yeah.
It's for both the student and the parent.
Yes.
the same
Yes. Yeah.
College application form has to be filled out prior to the meeting.
No. So the only thing we really ask before the meeting is to have some sense of narrowed down colleges, I guess. So some sense of a list. So typically at our junior meetings, we come up with a broad list of schools, and at the end of the junior meetings, we've asked them to do a little research and narrow it down. So that's usually, it's more beneficial to have that list when you show up. Yeah. Not currently, but typically all of the information is online. So there's different websites that are accessible, but not through Naviance. But we use, I specifically use College Confidential a good amount. There are websites we can help to get broader data.
For the virtual college visits, are they linked that the schools make a specific appointment on a day and time for Tahoe?
Correct, just for Tuckahoe students, yeah.
In reference to the college virtual, I've got emails saying, Penn State, whoever's gonna be here. Is there gonna be a reminder email the day before?
So there is, and actually Dr. Linehan announces
We
it
announce it
every morning.
It's on, if you go on daily announcements on the website, it's there, but I announce them every morning. I usually give today's college visits and the next 3 days.
And do you have to register ahead of time?
So Ms. Nicolettos asks the students to let her know so that she can mark them so they're not absent from class. So she would like to know, yeah. Yeah.
Nick had already mentioned this, but some of the schools that we visited, they mentioned just doing 10 colleges. So do anything as far as pros and cons? What is the average amount of colleges that students typically apply?
Yeah, I would say students apply typically from like 6 to 12 schools. We always have the outliers who apply to 25, and we have some that apply to one school, maybe early decision. So it depends, and that typically the one piece of advice is as long as you have some safety, some target and reaches, if you have anything in excess of that, that's up to the family if they want to pay the application fees to apply to more. But we always remind the students you only want to apply to schools that you actually want to attend. Otherwise, you're taking away spots from other students who maybe want to attend. So we encourage students to really think it through before, but it's totally a family decision as long as you have safety, target, and reach.
Do the students or do you guys, like, if you apply to all these colleges, you get into whatever schools, and you decide that you want to go into, Harvard or whatever, do you guys let the other colleges know that they apply to, that they, were no longer interested in that, or do the kids?
So the advice is typically to, we tell the students to reach out to admissions to let them know that they will no longer be attending. So sometimes that's before they've even heard a decision, but other times it's after they've heard from everywhere. But yes, it's the nice thing to do. So it makes room for others who really do want to attend or who have been deferred and who want to get off that list as well.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
For the binding application, if the student changed their mind last second, like, they able to?
So it just, yeah, so you actually, it's because you've signed an agreement, the college will request, it's typically only a financial reason that you can opt out of it, and then you actually need to provide documentation to why you can no longer afford it. And, but more than that, as like a community and as Tuckahoe, we have like a reputation, and if a student is taking or if a college is taking our word that students really want to go and they're accepting them based on that, it doesn't look good for Tuckahoe as a whole if our students continuously back out of it. So we do really encourage you to think it through and make sure it's an appropriate decision.
I don't recall an issue in my years here that happened. It's binding means binding.
So they just changed major or something.
Well, then we
The
usually-
major, the major doesn't matter as long as they're going into the college or university. They can switch majors within it once they're in, but it's you're applying under the pretense that if you get accepted, you will go.
Yeah, that's why Ms. Pillow alluded to, if you have a major you're interested in, but also a minor too, just in case you change your mind. And, you should anticipate, most of us have changed our minds throughout our lives. So, basically, if you don't like this, what would you do? So, soybeans are helpful.
Yeah, and it does increase your chances, like I said before. It's that, and the only other thing that really increases your chances are having a legacy, so like a direct family member that's also attended that institution. Yeah.
Curious of a general question, what percentage typically has the applications in by November 1 as a district budget?
I'd say like 70% have the applications in by like November 1st. So we've seen like a huge movement towards early action, and I think I appreciate it. I think the students appreciate it. Senior year is tough. They're getting started with new classes and athletics and whatever clubs or the play, and I think getting that done with is beneficial to everyone as long as they're prepared and ready and that the application's ready to go. Otherwise, holding off is best. And you can look to see when the deadlines are, and so maybe you get in your first 4 applications and wait another month and then get the rest in. But there's been a huge push for that. And I think it's also elsewhere. It's not just Tuckahoe. Yes.
Just a question on the scattergram.
Yeah.
Is the GPA fixed to the end of junior year?
Correct.
So that's not
It's
updated all?
no. So colleges can request quarter 1 or mid-year grades if they have not made a decision yet. or if a student gets deferred. So we always, in our individual meetings, encourage students, obviously, to start off really strong their senior year. But really, the GPA and academics that are looked at are freshmen through junior year.
So when we're looking at where we are, that's essentially.
Till the end of junior year. Yeah. Yes.
I have a question. If you're submitting the test score, say you're doing early action, okay, so I submit my test score, and my daughter takes the October 1st test and does better, can I resubmit my score?
You can. They may have made a decision already, but if there is no decision, you can, and you can also reach out. It's an opportunity to reach out to the counselor there and say, you know what, I decided to take the test one more time, and I'd like to resubmit my scores and let you know. And you absolutely can. Yes.
Do you encourage the students to, if they have in-person interviews,
I'm sorry, I missed that.
if they have in-person interviews to do that?
Yes, and right, we've seen probably fewer, and especially because of COVID, a lot less fewer. But I absolutely think so. I think sparking conversation during an interview and kind of hitting it off is still helpful. A lot of them are alumni interviews, so how much weight does it hold? I'm not positive, but I think if somebody really connects with you, then it's one more addition to your application. Absolutely.
Regularly, how often does that occur? Or is it requested by the school?
I'd say like 2 to 3 of my students last year, probably.
Any other questions? Well,
Do a lot of the colleges accept student score?
So it's totally individualized. So as you go, if you go to the collegeboard.org and you go and you click Send My Scores, you're going to add every single college that your child has applied to. And as you go school by school, it will let you know what is required by that school. So some schools will let you super score, some will, you just have to choose the highest seat. And then I've seen 1 or 2 really competitive schools where you have to just send all of your scores. And we know you're going to have a lot more questions, so we are here to help. All right, this is just the start of it.
First opportunity.
But in all honesty, we are here for you guys as well.
I
So
forgot to ask, you're going to be at the individual.
yes, you know our emails and phone, and we are happy to answer anything else.
Well, thanks very much for coming. Thank you, Jessica.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.